Extended phenotype. Richard Dawkins. Chapter 11. The genetical evolution of animal artifact. What do we really mean by the phenotype effect of a gene? As smattering of molecular biology measures as one kind of gene. Answer. Each gene code for the synthesis of one protein chain. In a proximal sense, an protein is a phenotypic effect, or distal effect like eye color of behavior are, in their turn, effect of the protein functions as an enzyme. Such a simple account does not, however, bear much searching analysis. The effect of any would be case can be given meaning only in terms of comparison, even if only an implied comparison, but at least one alternative cause. It's strictly incomplete to speak of blue eyes as the effect of a given gene G1. If we say such a thing, we really imply the potential existence of at least one alternative allele called G2, and at least one alternatively phenotype P2, in this case, say, brown eyes. Implicitly, you are making a statement about the relation between a pair of genes, G1, G2, and a pair of distinguishable phenotype P1, P2, in an environment which either is constant or varies in a non-systematic way, so that as a contribution randomized out. The environment in the last course is taken to include all the genes at other loci must be present in order for P1 or P2 to be expressed. Our statement is that there is a statistical tendency in individuals with G1 to be more likely than individual with G2 to show P1 rather than P2. Of course, there is no reason to demand that P1 should always be associated with G1. Not that G1 should always lead to P1. In the real world outside logic textbooks, the simple concept of necessary and sufficient must usually be replaced by statistical equivalent. Such an insistence that phenotypes are not caused by genes, but only phenotypic differences caused by gene differences, may seem to weaken the concept of genetic determination to the point where it ceases to be interesting. This is far from the case, at least if the subject of our interest is natural selection, because natural selection too is concerned with differences. Natural selection is the process by which some alleles propagate their alternatives, and the instrument by which they achieve this their phenotypic effect. It follows the phenotypic effect can always be thought of relative to alternative phenotypic effect. It is customary to speak as if difference always means difference between individual bodies or other discrete vehicles. The purpose of the next 3 chapters is to show that we can emancipate the concept of the phenotypic difference from that of the discrete vehicle altogether. And this is the meaning of the title extended phenotype. I shall show that the ordinary logic of genetic terminology leads inevitably to the conclusion that genes can be said to have extended phenotypic effect. Effect which need not be expressed at the level of any particular vehicle. Following an earlier paper, I shall take a step-by-step approach to the extended phenotype, beginning with conventional examples of ordinary phenotypic effect and gradually extending the concept of phenotype outward so that the continuity is easy to accept. The idea of genetic determination of animal artifact is a didactically useful intermediate example, and this will be the main topic of this chapter. But first, consider gene A, whose immediate molecular effect is the synthesis of black protein, which directly colors the skin of an animal black. The gene's only proximal effect in the molecular biology is the simple sense, is the synthesis of this one black protein. But is A a gene for being black? The point I want to make is that a matter of the definition that depends on how the population varies. Assume that A has an allele A prime, which fails to synthesize the black pigment, so that the individual homogeneous for A prime tend to be white. In this case, A is truly a gene for being black in the sense in which I wish to use the passage, but it may alternatively be that all the variation in skin color that actually occur in the population is due to variation at a quite different locus B. B's immediate biochemical effect is the synthesis of protein which is not a black pigment, but which act is as an enzyme on a whole indirect effect. In comparison, it is LA B prime. At some distance remove is the facilitation of the synthesis by A of the black pigment is skin cell. To be true, A, the gene whose protein property is black pigment, is necessary in order for an individual to be black. So are thousands of other genes, if only because they are necessary to make the individual exist at all. But I shall not call A a gene for blackness unless some of the variation in the population is due to lack of A. If all individuals without fail have A and the only reason individuals are not black is that they have B prime rather than B, we shall say that B but not A is a gene for blackness. If there is a variation of both Roche affecting blackness, we shall refer to both A and B as genes for blackness. The point has is relevant here is that both A and B are potentially entitled to be called genes for the blackness, depending on the alternative that exists in the population. The fact the causal chain linking A to the product of the black pigment molecule is short, while the for B is long and tortuous, is irrelevant. Most gene effects seen by the whole animal biologists and all those seen by ethologists are long and tortuous. Geneticist colleague has argued that there are virtually no visible genetic trails because all those so far discovered have turned to be a byproduct of more fundamental, biological, or physiological effect. But far from us that he thinks a genetic trait is morphological, physiological, or behavioral. If not a byproduct of something more fundamental, if we think the method through we find that all genetic effects are byproduct except protein pro-molecules. Returning to an back-skin example, it's even possible that the chain of causation linking a gene such B to its black-skinned phenotype might involve a behavioral link. Suppose that A can synthesize black pigment only the presence of sunlight, and suppose that B works by making individuals seek sunlight in comparison with B prime. It makes them seek a shade. B individual will then tend to be blacker than B prime individuals because they spend more time in the sun, which still be existing terminological convention. A gene for blackness, no less than need to be a causal chain involved in internal biochemistry only, rather than an external behavioral loop. Indeed, geneticists, in the poor sense of the word, did not care about the detailed pathway from gene to phenotype effect. Strictly speaking, a geneticist who concerned himself with this interesting matter is temporarily wearing the head of an embryologist. The poor geneticist is concerned with the end product, and in particular with the difference between alleles in their effect on the end product. Natural selection's concept is precisely the same, but natural selection works on outcomes. The interim conclusion is that you are already accustomed to phenotype effect being attached to their gene by long and devious chain of causal connection. Therefore, further extension of the concept of phenotype should not overstretch our credibility. This chapter takes the first step towards such a further extension